It might seem like it's a really good buy to buy this aircraft, but is it going to be an aircraft that's going to have to be parted out because there's no longer training available, and then you can't fly it because they're not going to meet the FAA regulations?
Those are the ones you get a good deal on usually.
Yeah.
Welcome to Own the Jet by Aspen Aero Group, where we share perspectives from some of the leading voices in private jet ownership and business aviation. I'm your host, Derek Savage, along with my co-host, Jason Spoor, president of Aspen Aero Group. Our guests today are Gregg Salser and Jason Wardwell from JetPro Pilots. Gregg and Jason work with jet owners to help make sure their flights are staffed with the right people to make their journey a success. Join us as we dive deep into the mechanics, mindset, and moments that define jet ownership. And together, we'll learn what it takes to own the jet.
Welcome, Jason Wardwell and Gregg Salser from JetPro Pilots.
Thank you.
Based here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, welcome to Own the Jet, and thank you for joining us today. For our viewers here, what does JetPro Pilots do, and how do they help people that are in that jet purchasing situation? Like, where? I guess give me an overview of the company, if you would.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily advise on the purchase of the aircraft. We would kind of recommend a broker to kind of start with those pieces. So we'd kind of come in more after the airplane's purchased, and then crew. You need a crew. So we can help with augmenting. So we're a staffing agency. So we can.
Yeah. So you guys crew up all these people that own the jets and
Right.
corporations, companies, all that stuff.
Private flight departments, major corporations, Fortune, whatever size companies that have, basically have a flight department set up or getting one set up. And then we can help with the staffing part of it, whether it's full-time, part-time, or whatever they need to kind of get things going, or ongoing support, or we'll get into all that, but there's a lot of different things we can do.
Yeah.
Nice.
And sometimes it might start with that jet purchase. They've closed on the jet and they need us to position that jet, do a ferry flight to a particular location. Then their pilot crew that they might have is off at training, and so they might use us for the first month or so, and then their pilots are trained, and then consequently they're taking over. But then it's a thing where they might use us longer term based on vacations and different variables that would come up where.
Right.
They would want to give their flight department a break. And so, yeah.
And it almost becomes like an outsourced HR department for people, right? Is that
Can be
kind of the way that
depends. So we've got several different models of crewing that we can do. So
Okay.
we've got basically 3 services that we offer. So one's called JetPro Trip.
Okay.
So that's kind of a trip by trip thing. So if a flight department's got an existing airplane flight department established with crew already, but they just need a pilot here and there. They may need to fill in for a while.
Okay.
Or like Gregg said, somebody's out of training, or we need to
Sick or gone, or
Right.
just an ad-needed pilot or an ad-needed flight attendant. So we have flight attendants too. So it's not always pilots.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So just kind of an on-demand service.
Okay.
And then in that model, we become the employer of record. So we actually employ the crew member, whether it's a pilot, a flight attendant, technician, whatever it is. We become the employer of record, and then just assign them back out to that flight department for 4 days, 5 days,
Gotcha.
however long that trip is. But then we do all the payroll, we do the tax withholdings, we do the insurance, workers' comp.
So these are like
and
full
everything.
W-2 employees.
Full
They are
W-2.
not just independent contractors.
Yes, that's one thing that sets us apart a little bit is that we're 100% W-2. So we pay that the employer side FICA, if you guys know all your tax rules.
Nice. And you said you had 2 other
Services.
services,
So,
right?
So JetPro Trip is what we started with that. Our company was founded in 2009.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we got started.
Okay.
Back in the early days, we just had some pilots, had some clients, and just kind of did a little matchmaking, and kind of started out small.
Yeah.
In 2009. And we've been doing it ever since. And then since then, we've grown in. And right after Gregg came on board, or as Gregg was coming on board,
I was the first sales guy.
How long ago was that?
Going on 7-8 years ago.
2018, so been down a while.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool.
So when Gregg came on, one of the things we added was JetPro, what we call JetPro Recruit.
Okay.
So it's basically a headhunting service. So by that time, we had built a pretty big database of crew members.
Gotcha.
So we got all these people at our fingertips, and so we got to thinking, well, because we had some people that had reached out to us and say, hey, can you guys help me find a pilot to hire full time? I want to hire them, but I just can't find anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to sift through all these resumes and do all this stuff and interview and everything. And I need you guys. You guys is what you guys do.
Yeah.
So we're like, So we figured out we could do this recruit business, right? So
Okay.
it's different in the sense that what we're doing is our service, instead of providing the pilot to actually go fly the plane, we're providing recruiting and screening services that help augment their HR department, or maybe they don't have one.
Right.
Or they're not focused on aviation, so they don't necessarily know how to interview a pilot.
Yeah.
Where we've got people in-house that will do that, and then we take just like a one-time placement fee once that client decides they want to hire them, and then they hire them and put them on their own payroll, and then we take our fee and then move on. So it's just a little bit of a different kind of service.
So a lot of chief pilots like that arrangement of having a recruitment firm, because they're not going through 100, 200, 400 resumes to find the pilot, or their HR department's just not sending them, this many resumes, figure out who you want to hire. We do all that screening and sourcing to make sure we're getting the criteria met. And by the time the crew member gets to that chief pilot and they're doing their interviews, it's usually just a matter of, is the personality meshing with the rest of the department? We know they're going to meet the criteria they've given us as far as total hours, time and type, or if it's a flight attendant, do they have these certifications? We know they're going to meet that criteria. It's just a matter of, is that person going to really jive and interact
with the other
with
the rest of the flight department?
Because at the end of the day, you're going to be working with these people, right? I mean, you need to know that this is someone you're going to want to work with.
Right. And it's good, too, because since we started with our JetPro Trip service, assuming it's a Part 91 operation, we can get a JetPro Trip contract set up. And we've had several clients that have exercised that as like a trial period.
Okay.
So let's say,
almost like a temp to hire sort of thing?
Yeah. So we've interviewed this pilot. We really think he or she's going to be a great fit for us.
Yeah.
So let's get them on a trip, a real trip. Instead of just sitting in a conference room or a Zoom, let's actually do a real trip with them. Well, okay, that's great. But to do that, we've got to make sure we got a trip contract in place just in case something happens, and they're probably going to be paid for it. It's not going to, most people aren't going to do a, 4-day interview for free.
Right.
So we've had a couple instances where people are willing to do that, but for the most part, it's a paid trip. But that gives them a chance to travel with them, rub elbows, go to the restaurant, go to the hotels, check in and out, see how they treat the staff, see how they interact in the real world before they make a final hiring decision.
Okay.
So it's a nice approach to kind of blend it in a little bit more than just, okay, we hired this person and then let's see if they work out. At least it's a little bit of a trial period there.
Gotcha. And then you have a third line of business that you do outside of the trip and recruit.
So JetPro Trip, JetPro Recruit, and then we have what's called JetPro HR.
Okay.
So I don't know how many people know what a PEO is, but it's a PEO-style service.
Okay.
Professional employment agency.
Right.
Or professional employment organization.
Right.
So it's basically an agency that would employ. So we employ on a longer-term basis crew members. So it could be a pilot, could be a flight attendant. We've got drone pilots on it now. Could be a maintenance technician, different kinds of managers, whatever the client needs.
Yeah.
We'll bring them full-time on our payroll and either set them up as salary or hourly. Salary, if I can speak.
They get
salaried
paid.
or hourly. They get paid one way or the other. And then we assign them out full-time. So they take their day-to-day direction from the client.
Okay.
And then we take care of of course, the payroll, the taxes, everything else. But then those groups, unlike the on-demand W-2 people, they're still W-2, but they also get benefits, right? Because they're full-time.
Gotcha.
So health insurance, 401k with the match, and
they get benefits from you that the
the
client's paying for.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll bake that all into a package, and we'll have a rate.
Okay.
Well, depending on what the client needs. Sometimes they want usually a monthly rate.
Okay.
Sometimes we bill weekly. It just depends on the client.
Gotcha.
But we'll set up that rate, and then we'll bake in. We'll kind of ask them, because we've got some flexibility even within that. There's certain things we can do to kind of help tailor, different levels of health insurance or HSA match money that they may want to fund. We've got some, bigger flight departments that really want the top shelf pilots that, hey, we want to give them the gold treatment, the gold star treatment here. So let's get them good benefits. I don't want them paying very much in premiums. Let's get them some HSA money to put in their HSA accounts.
Okay.
And so we can do that and kind of dial in based on what they need. And kind of tailor a custom fit for them.
Nice. So for the people that are hiring you for these services, what do you see as like your biggest niche, your biggest client that you're looking for or is looking for you in regards to this?
What do you think? Probably a lot of corporate flight departments. I mean, I think that's probably our bread and butter.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, we've got some clients that they've used us on the recruitment side so frequently that they'll just call up Seth or they'll call up me, and it's like, this is what we need, a pilot at this location. We already know what all their benefit packages are. We know the temperament and the culture of the organization. So it's just a matter of, hey, we're looking for a pilot here. And we've already got all of our criteria set, so it's easy for them, it's easy for us after we get to know a client, what they're looking for. And so then we just do that referral of that particular candidate, and they do their interviews on their end.
Yeah.
You know, one of the nice things about JetPro and the recruitment service is the fact, too, that we have a guarantee.
Yeah.
So if that pilot leaves or fired or is terminated within the first year, we have a guarantee, and we have another guarantee if they're leave or fired or terminated in the first 60 days. And I can tell you, we do such a good job at placing the right candidate in the right position that in the last 5 years, we've only had maybe a handful of times
just a couple of
we've
times
ever had to offer that guarantee. And that's because when we're getting that criteria from the client and understanding what they're looking for, we're really sourcing and only presenting that candidate. Maybe we've talked to, 25, 50, 100 candidates, and we're presenting that one candidate to them to do their
sometimes
final.
a couple.
Yeah, or
Just
maybe a
depends on the
couple.
situation.
Yeah.
How do you guys find all these qualified candidates? I mean, are you constantly just like in talks
we've got a big database. So we started out with JetPro Trip. So we've tried to, over the years, build out that pool.
Okay.
Right. So because within our trip model, we get sometimes last minute trip requests, right?
Yeah.
So if we've got a client with Hawker 800 XP in Tallahassee. Okay. We may get a call that say I need a Hawker 800 XP pilot in 2 days in Tallahassee.
Okay.
So the bigger pool I've got of people that are onboarded in our system, vetted, background checks, FAA background checks, all they're ready to go.
Right.
And that's the pins on our website. So if you guys go to our website, you can see all these different pins for all these different aircraft. So that's where we've got crew. Those are real people. Okay. We just have initials on there. We don't put their names and their addresses and everything out there, social security numbers. So it's just very, very limited information. But they can see, okay, they have a pilot there.
Okay.
So that way so the more we have, the better chance we have of being able to respond. I mean, ideally, that pilot would be sitting there waiting, or not waiting, but available and in the city and already vetted, pre-screened, typed, current, ready to go.
Right.
That's not reality all the time.
Okay.
So sometimes we'll have to position someone in.
Yeah.
If they're a state away or 2 states away, that's a lot easier than going coast to coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a last minute trip.
And most pilots aren't waiting. I mean, most pilots are booked out. And so we get that client that calls us a day before or 2 days before.
Right.
We're looking for the most local pilot that we can possibly find to keep that client's costs down. But if no one is available, then we're going to surrounding states to find someone who's available and working our way out. Because ultimately, we want to make sure the clients, their costs is kept within, a range. But if they're also not letting us know about a trip till last minute, then we do our best to find who's available, and ultimately just making sure that pilot is typed and qualified and current in the aircraft. And
now, when you say typed and qualified, so this is something I just learned recently.
Okay.
Right, because I'm new to the aviation world, but I've always thought, as a lay person to this industry, that a pilot is a pilot, and if they know how to fly a jet, I see all these movies where somebody just jumps on an airplane and they know how to fly it if they've never been on it before. I mean, you guys have all seen stuff like that.
Too many movies.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, they have to have the certifications. They have to have flown so many hours in this plane to get certified for it, and then. You'd mentioned like the hardware in the plane might be different, even if it's the same plane.
Avionics.
Right. So can you talk about that a little bit and how that becomes a factor?
So how that works is when you start out, like if you say today, if you're not a pilot,
right?
So let's say you want to go to pilot school and start. So you'd go to a local flight school here, and you'd kind of pick out a plane like maybe a Cessna 172 is a single engine, very simple airplane that you kind of learn to fly on. So you go to ground school, learn how to do some basic flying. Fly with an instructor for a while, then eventually go solo. That's kind of a big milestone when you do your first solo.
Okay.
Then you start learning how to fly the plane, and then as you get more and more experience, And then, so you'll start out with there's 3 different levels of licenses. You start with a private pilot, and then you go to a commercial pilot license, which allows you to work for money, for wage. And the highest levels where we work is the ATP.
I was hoping you'd say astronaut, but okay.
Yeah, so airline transport pilot is what that means. And then so in those bigger jets, what we work in, with the exception of a few airplanes that aren't type rated, most of what we crew is what the FAA considers a type rated plane.
Okay.
And most of your listeners are going to be probably looking to buy a jet. If they're going to buy a jet, it's probably a type rated aircraft.
Okay.
But what that means is that in order for that pilot to fly that plane, they've not only have to have that ATP, which is the highest level of license, but they have to have this type rating, which gets assigned to the ATP, and you can have 1 or more, 5 or 10 or whatever type ratings that you get over the course of your career. But the point is, you've got to be trained on that specific jet.
Right.
Okay. So as you go to flight school, you learn ground school, you learn all the lingo and all that, and then you don't necessarily get trained specifically on the Cessna 172.
Right.
Pretty simple, right?
Okay.
And then, but you don't want to bounce too much between airplanes when you're first learning. But maybe hey, I'll fly the Diamond for a little bit. And it's pretty similar and got some different characteristics a little bit, but it's generally a pretty simple plane to fly. But when you get into these bigger jets, these corporate jets, they are incredibly complicated, right? You've got different avionics systems, and they fly and they handle differently, and they can do different things. And basically, what the pilot's doing is when they go to school, they get trained specifically on that aircraft, and they know I won't say every nut and bolt, but every system that's on there, the electronics, the hydraulics, the avionics, how it performs, different speed ratings that it has, and different capabilities, and climbing rates and descending rates, and all these different things that they have to learn inside and out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about some of these movies where there's a problem, right? Well, you want your pilot to know exactly how that aircraft is designed, and how the hydraulics move those wing surfaces up and down, and what could be the problem. And I've got an indicator. I know how that's designed. I know what this system is. It's electronic. It's hydraulic.
You don't want to be at 30,000 feet. And it's like, oh, what's this button do?
Exactly. So there's an appreciation there. So I'm not a pilot either, but Gregg and I both been to ground school, so we kind of know the basics at least.
Is that just the pilots, or do the rest of the crew have to be certified on that aircraft as well?
I mean, the pilots are flying the plane, so flight attendants, they've got different kind of training, so they'll go and learn. It's basically all about safety.
Yeah.
So
there's medical training for flight attendants. There's some, clients want a flight attendant who has certain culinary arts skills and presentation skills for food. And, so it's kind of identifying what the client is looking for and then presenting that, crew member, whether it's a pilot or a flight attendant, that's going to, meet their particular needs. When we're providing pilots at JetPro, it's all about safety.
Yeah.
And, whether that pilot is flying as a first officer or a captain, 99.999% of the time, they're going to be captain qualified.
Okay.
And so we just want to make sure, because we don't know that captain, if we're providing the first officer, we don't know that captain. Are they going to have a heart attack in the air? And then if you just provide a body, can they safely land that airplane? So we're all about safety. It's always going to be a captain qualified pilot, whether they're flying as first officer or captain in that airplane.
Well, there's got to be, from your guys' perspective, there has to be a huge vetting procedure that you do with everyone, right? I mean, that's a big part of what you guys are bringing to the table, right?
Yeah. So we've got detailed checklists on when we onboard someone. So we call it our onboarding process. So we'll go through and we'll vet, pilot's license. We've mentioned the FAA checks. We'll go through and do the FAA verification.
Not the FFA, but the FAA.
Not the FFA. Exactly, yeah. So we'll go and get reports directly from the FAA and then cross-reference that with their information that they send us. I mean, we've never really had problems with this, but you can Photoshop things, and I mean, God forbid somebody were to Photoshop a type rating onto their wallet card, but we'd catch it if they did, right?
Yeah.
Because we're getting it directly from the FAA as opposed to just 100% trusting them. We've never had a problem with that. Most people in this industry are very professional. We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But I've heard stories,
Yeah.
So that's a nice way that we can kind of double check and make sure that everything's good. And so we'll go through and vet everything, and having a captain qualified person, like Gregg said, 99% of the time, they'll be captain qualified. We'll make exceptions once in a while if we know there's a strong captain that the client is providing, and so we'll maybe make because FAA allows that, right? They allow non-captain qualified person to be flying in the right seat as a first officer. So the FAA allows that.
Yeah.
But what we usually find is the insurance
Yeah.
that's the most restrictive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as you can require the insurance folks,
They
have
want to
got it all
know that
dialed in,
Yeah.
this guy can land the plane
Yeah.
if anything
Yeah.
happens.
So once the client sets up an account with us, after that account's set up, one of the criteria that we're asking for from the client is, what are your insurance requirements? So
Yeah.
we're just not presenting a pilot that doesn't meet or exceed those insurance requirements.
Right.
Gotcha.
If there's an exception, if the pilot's medical has went to, category 2 instead of class 1, then all
Yeah.
this, we'll maybe ask for an exception if we know the pilot and their insurance approves that. But it's rare that we're ever asking for exceptions, because again, it all falls back to safety. I wouldn't want a pilot flying a plane for a client that I wasn't comfortable having that pilot fly my own family, and so
Yeah,
it's, it's definitely, we're a family organization. We consider our clients part of that family. This is such a small industry. It's a big industry, but it's a small industry. And
Yeah, I've heard people describe it that way too, where it's just like everybody kind of knows one another in aviation. It's not too long before you start to learn who all the
players
different
are,
people are.
people are, yeah.
You'd mentioned stories earlier, Jason. There was you said something about some interesting requirements that people have had, right?
Yeah, so the corporate jet and that crewing, that's kind of our bread and butter, and that's kind of our normal, what kind of jet is at this time. But that we've been doing that for 15 years now. So
Yeah.
But some of the more interesting things I was thinking about that. So we got a request from it's a federal government subcontractor that contacted us. So we got a contract established with, not directly with the federal government, but with a subcontractor.
Yeah.
And they're flying astronauts into Kazakhstan.
That's cool.
Yeah. So so they had, I think they were Gulfstreams. I can't remember for sure, but they were flying the astronauts.
And this is probably because the Soyuz was being used for a while, right? To like take people up and down, and it wasn't.
Right.
It
So
wasn't.
the rockets were launching from, I think, Kazakhstan or somewhere over there.
Yeah, it was joint with our astronauts and
Right.
Yeah.
So they were shuttling some of the, I think, American astronauts. I don't get into all the back end stuff, but
Yeah.
But the point was that they were flying their Gulfstreams into Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan's air traffic control does not speak English.
yeah.
So all the pilots speak English,
Yeah.
and that's English is generally the international standard, so it's usually
Right.
not a problem, right, for
Yeah.
any pilot that's trained in the U.S. But in this case, we needed Russian speaking. So what we provided, they came to us and said, "Do you have Russian English, bilingual, that can help us ride in the cockpit and help translate air traffic control in real time?" While we're flying these astronauts into Kazakhstan.
So the Russian-speaking people weren't necessarily flying the plane; they were relaying information from air traffic control.
Yeah, and I think,
But they were pilots, so they had
they knew how to communicate. I mean,
the
air traffic
lingo for
exactly. Yeah, the air
Yeah.
traffic control
Yeah.
communications are pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to just where you're going to be in the altitude, and so we found some Russian-speaking pilots that.
That's awesome.
So I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
Those just oddball things that we got such a database, we're organized, we track languages.
Yeah.
When they say what languages do you speak, and so we were able to pull it up out of we got a system we call CrewTrack, which is very deep, and it's got all the information in it and all the so we can run reports and kind of figure out where people are and all those little intricacies and get all that at our fingertips.
Nice.
So we were able to pull it off. It was kind of neat.
So when would I know? Like, if I think I might need to reach out to somebody about crewing for my aircraft, whether it's personal or business or what have you, when do I know is the right time to reach out to you guys?
Well, if it's a new aircraft you're just purchasing and you don't have pilots, then obviously it'd be good to know when that sale is going to take place, and so and when you're going to need those pilots. And if it's a Part 91, are you willing to take a pilot that can be sent to school? Have you booked the training for them? Or we've got pilots that are already fully trained. So it's really identifying that. So it might be at the time the sale takes place, and we're positioning that aircraft and then providing the full crew post sale, and so possibly a month or two or so.
It could even be before.
Yeah.
So what I would encourage is we've had situations where they'll work with a broker and they'll go through their due diligence and they'll talk about the range on the aircraft and altitudes and how many passengers it can carry and cost and all that. But we've had several where, a client will buy an airplane, close on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got to get pilots for this.
Yeah. I had somebody
Just
call
as
me
an
up and said,
afterthought.
I just bought a $40 million plane and I heard you guys provide the pilots. They didn't have anyone.
Like, you guys didn't
And
think
so
about this before
it
you bought the
was-
plane?
Yeah,
But my,
yes.
but my point being is, I guess I would encourage people to consider that as another variable
Yeah.
when you go to buy your airplane.
Gotcha. So you're having this
different-
conversation with your broker, you're having this conversation with your attorney.
Is this a common aircraft?
Right.
Are there readily available pilots?
Okay.
Maybe it's an older aircraft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of these older aircraft, they're still flying,
Yeah.
but there's not a whole lot of pilots that are flying them anymore because there's not a whole lot of airplanes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So those are just things to think about, and everything in between, right?
Right.
So that's just something to think about before you buy the aircraft. That's another thing to kind of keep in mind. May sway your decision, may not.
Right.
But it's something to consider.
And that's the key, working with a great broker too, that really can help you identify,
Yeah.
is this aircraft going to be parted out in 2 years? It might seem like it's a really good buy to buy this aircraft, but is it going to be an aircraft that's going to have to be parted out because there's no longer training available and then you can't fly it because they're not going to meet the FAA regulations?
Those are the ones you
to
get a
fly
good
it.
deal on usually.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you're having that conversation about which aircraft to buy, that's when you want to start having the conversation with JetPro pilots about getting
We'd
the right
love that
crew for
opportunity to help give a little guidance, and
Yeah.
people can get on our website and you can kind of see the aircraft that we crew. We crew like 60 some different aircraft types, so you can go through our website and then pull up the map, and that'll give you an idea, right?
Yeah.
Some of those maps are just chock full of pilots, and some of them are some of the newer models are a little more sparse.
Is that
right?
the best way
Yeah.
for people to reach out to you? Is your website?
Sure. Yeah.
You guys are on all the
Or they
socials, right?
Call us directly or reach out to our
Can we
website.
do the sales plug here?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So if I wanted to reach out, if I'm the well, first off, is there anything else that somebody might need to know before contacting you, or any kind of like closing thoughts about before we do the plug? Are there any kind of like closing thoughts about what people need to know about making sure they have the right crew for their jet, regardless of if they're a private jet owner or a corporation or what their situation is? What is a good closing thought that you guys can maybe bring to the table about what I need to know?
Just because you have the money doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything there is to know about running a successful flight department. There's a lot to it. And if it's new to you, rely on the experts. You'll learn over time, and then you can decide if you want to back off and manage certain things yourself. But start with the experts, do best practice, and then go from there.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So if somebody does want to engage with you, first off, they're probably talking with their broker or management company and they're engaging with you, but they want to engage with you directly. Best place to do that is where?
Well, you can go to our website, which is www.jetpropilots, and that's JETPRO, and pilots with an S on the end, .com.
Okay.
So that'll kind of give you a basis for our interaction with the client. They can also call our office directly, and that number is on the website. And
Okay.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, we'll put a link in the description below.
Great.
And I want to thank both of you for coming out. Jason, Greg, much appreciated. And hopefully we can work together to help more people own the jet.
Yeah,
Great.
Great.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks for
being
your
here.
time
All right,
today.
Thank you.
All
You
right.
bet. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Own the Jet. If you want to see more Own the Jet, make sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and leave a comment telling us what aspect of jet ownership you'd like to know more about. Own the Jet is brought to you by Aspen Aero Group, your trusted partner in private and corporate jet ownership. Learn more at aspenaerogroup.com. This has been a Savage Media production.